bureau director is right on it, and we're gonna keep things moving. We'll definitely keep the board updated on the progress. And the other thing I just wanted to note is that Laura Graham has graciously agreed to step up in acting capacity and fill our needs on that front while we're going through this process. So thank you, Laura. I think that's effective as of.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Terrific. And I guess one other thing I wanted to say is that we've kind of got a double whammy at BPL because Liz, I don't know if you've shared it, and I'm sorry if I'm outing you, but Liz is also moving on to a really incredible new opportunity. So sorry to see her go, but this will probably be your last board meeting with us in this capacity as well. So just wanted to recognize both of you for having just been incredible to work with and for everything that you've done.
Great. We'll save time at the end to congratulate Sarah before she heads off. But it sounds like you guys are bar hopping all across all of that. I expect it to be reflected properly on all time sheets just to. Not sure there's a ham. So it's just,
Yeah, what cost center will that be?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Amanda, and congratulations to Laura and thank you for your willingness to step up. I appreciate it. So let's, we do have a fairly lengthy agenda here, but it's nothing that we can't get through in time to leave a bit for comments at the end. So the first item is introductions, which we've taken care of. Because this is an in-person meeting, you should have your per diem sheet, and just make sure you get those forms submitted to staff. And moving right along to the minutes of the January 24th meeting, has everybody had an opportunity to review those minutes?
I move we accept.
This is not working.
Second that.
Got a motion by Roger, seconded by Jim, to accept the minutes. Do you have any comments, Barbara?
I just want to congratulate the staff on the biennial report. We talked about it, that it was in draft form. It was sent to us and it's very readable, very consumable. I hope legislators will read it because I think the information in there not only reflects the past 2 years, but it's cumulative for the whole 35 years of LMF's existence. And it's really important that people understand the impact, particularly we will face another funding question in the future.
Yes. Any other comments within the minutes? Being none, are there any objections to the minutes? Seeing none in the room and not seeing any objections online, the motion's passed. Motion passes without objection. And if Sarah can make the thing work, we're gonna go right into fund balances.
Yes, so here's where we stand. You can see the 2009 bond allocate remaining funds there highlighted in yellow. The 2011, we're quickly spending down the 2011, and then the bottom right hand is what's remaining in the community conservation fund. Just to remind the board, we always try to spend the oldest money first. When it gets down to $800, you're trying to figure out what bill is the right bill to code to cancel out this last remaining amount. So we're continuing to work on that. And I think you'll see that 2011 bond cleared out. My guess is by the end of the summer is the plan. So moving forward with spending the funds down.
And I'm going to shake you down before you leave.
Tip her upside down and get all the loose change.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the checkbook.
Can you let people know we're recording?
Oh,
Forgot to.
yes. So
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yep, you're sorry.
Yeah, just anybody online, please make note that we are recording this and for the folks in the room. So, any questions on fund status? Seeing none, we'll move right along to the next item. Is allocations.
what am I supposed to?
I think you're supposed to be
Put it at the laptop.
Yeah. May want to just advance from the laptop.
Yeah,
I just tried. Oh, I will work on it.
we'll get there.
We did have the.
There we go.
Yeah, these were impacted when we had our water dam here, so go back to OIT.
So here we have the project at your active projects. 26 active conservation and recreation projects with, which have allocation of 11,862,295. This is reflected in your board packet. There's like sort of an Excel spreadsheet that shows each of the projects. We have 1 active water access project, 3 farmland projects, and 5 working waterfront projects, totaling 35 active projects with allocations totaling just under $14 million. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward with the next call for proposals, which we'll talk about later in the agenda, but 35 active projects across 3 staff. So it's a workload. We did have a recent closing with the East Grand Weston project. You may have seen some publicity about that, which was great to see that very long sort of process come to a close with the closing of that, and the easement is held by Bureau of Parks and Lands. And then we're hoping for a couple of closings this spring, which include in Tondro and Keyser corridor. I wanted to just sort of like make myself feel better as I'm leaving you all, kind of walk through some of the numbers for you so you have a understanding of where we're at before you enter into this next call for proposals. You'll recall that in the beginning, we started with $30 million for community conservation funds. The board has made some votes to set aside funds, to provide funding to agencies, and then project allocations, project expenditures, leaving you with a total of $11 million of unallocated funds. So as you go into reviewing proposals in May and then again in September, that's what you've got to work with for those projects. It's important that the board remember that those project allocations, some of them are appraised value, some of them are, their best guess at the time that they send in their proposal. So that number will continue to tighten and become more real with the more appraisals that we get in. So just keep that in mind, that number, there's still some wiggle room.
And Sarah, with the letters of inquiry that we've received so far, how does that square against the?
We will go through that a little bit later on, but I think just to answer your question quickly, it's looking like $9 million in ask. We'll go through that.
Have we received a bunch of actual project requests,
The proposals are due this Friday.
and we have all the inquiries follow up, or?
No, like I said, we'll get into the details on what that's gonna look like. That concludes my part.
Okay, any other questions on application status, project status? Seeing none, we're gonna jump right into the meat of the agenda. Item 5, which is project approvals, and the first one up is Square Lake, and that's Flora.
Yeah, so the Square Lake Cross Lake project is located in Square Lake Township in Aroostook County. 4,100 acres approximately to be acquired by the Bureau of Parks and Lands. Over 1,700 acres of the Cross Lake Fence focus area of statewide ecological significance. 5.5 miles of undeveloped shoreline on Square and Cross Lakes. We've managed for multiple uses, and BPL is hoping to develop a trailered boat launch, which would provide guaranteed public boating access to Square Lake, which doesn't exist currently. So the AOC Appraisal Oversight Committee met on January 31st of 2023 to discuss the Square Lake Cross Lake appraisal. The appraisal reported a value of $2.5 million or $603.14 per acre within a range of 4,045 to 4,245 acres, assuming no material changes to the physical characteristics of the parcel. And this was just because there was a little bit of uncertainty of the size of the project, and the survey has not been completed yet. It is underway. And the surveyor, as you'll see in your notes, the surveyor did come up with an initial estimate of the size within that range reported there of 4,100 acres. So the committee accepted the appraised value. And here's a draft motion for your consideration.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $2.5 million or $603.14 per acre within a range of 4,045 to 4,205 acres.
Second that motion.
The committee motion does not need a second.
I'm sorry.
Discussion on the, any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, is there any, Catherine, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. I approve of the motion.
Is there any objections to the motion? Read into the record, the motion from the Appraisal Oversight Committee is to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraised value of $2.5 million or $603.14 per acre within the range of 4,045 to 4,245 acres. No objections to the motion. Seeing no objections, the motion passes.
Right.
That's a little delay. Oh,
There we go.
there we go.
Old school way.
So public notice for the Square Lake Cross Lake project was advertised in the Kennebec Journal and the Bangor Daily News on March 10th of 2023. No comments were received. And a second draft motion is here for your consideration.
I move to confirm the allocation of 890,000 in LMF conservation and recreational funding to support the acquisition subject to standard conditions.
Second. Motion by Barbara, seconded by Roger. Before we go to the board for any questions, is there anybody from the public or from the project that has any comments before the board votes? Seeing none, is there any online?
No, despite that, there's nobody in chat right now that's live, so no.
Okay, excellent. Is there any objections to the motion? I should read into the record one last time. The draft, no longer the draft motion. The motion by Barbara, seconded by Roger, is to confirm the allocation of 890,000 in LMF CNR funding to support the acquisition subject to standard conditions. Seeing no objections, the motion passes. Excellent, thank you. Figure out how to. Okay, so the next one up is Edwards Mills, and that is again for.
Yes. Okay, so the Edwards Mills project is located in Norway, Otisfield, and Harrison. This is phase one of the Mill Hill Edwards Mills working towards project funded in round, both the initial funding voted on in round 10C. So this is half of that project. It's 720 acres, fee acquisition by Western Foothills Land Trust. This part of the project would protect over 3 miles of the Crooked River, or 3 miles of Crooked River frontage, which is the largest tributary into Sebago Lake and supports Maine's only endemic self-sustaining population of landlocked salmon, contains 47 acres of wetlands, and offers both non-motorized recreation trails and snowmobile trails. The Appraisal Oversight Committee met on March 7th of 2023 to discuss the Edward Mills appraisal. The appraisal reported a value of $1 million, and the committee accepted the appraised value of $1 million with comments, which are in your board packet. So draft motion here for your consideration.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $1 million.
Any questions? Norris?
A comment, I just want to make sure that the public and everyone realizes that the AOC does some very serious review, and it's not always a rubber stamp, as case by this, and I think we fully explored all the implications of the appraisal and move forward.
Great. Thank you for those comments, Jim. Any additional comments? So just read for the record, the motion, which is a motion to approve and recommend the recommendation of the AOC and accept the appraised value of $1 million. Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes. And so God, she's getting efficient. She clicked the button about 5 minutes ago.
The other way, it's fun. Keeps me on my toes. Public notice for the Edwards Mills project was advertised in the Kennebec Journal on March 10th of this year. No comments were received. And you'll see in the draft motion here for your review that it's a slightly different number than what was in your board packet, but this was just because it's a phase one of a project, there was just a little bit of a change. So that explains the 302,000 as opposed to the 305.
I will move that we confirm the allocation of $302,000 on LMF conservation and recreation funding to support the acquisition subject to standard conditions.
We have a second. Second by Barbara. Motion by Roger, seconded by Barbara. Before we go to the board, are there any members of the public that have comments on this project? I don't see any hands online going up. I will read into the record, or any additional comments or questions from the board. The record, to confirm the allocation of 302,000. Oh,
Right, there was
Catherine, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you, Commissioner. I was just gonna make a quick comment to D1 attachment. Is there anything that we can do preemptively to assist the AOC in communication to the appraiser? And this may have already been done. I'm not sure if it was a new appraiser, but the comment was generally that it was more difficult. The appraiser just didn't make it very layperson friendly, I believe was the comment. Is there anything we can do preemptively to let appraisers know before they give their report? And that may already be done. I'm not sure, but I was just trying to think to make it easier for the AOC.
Bob or Jim, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I think you can see in the memo that wasn't that there was anything wrong with the appraisal. It just seemed to be lacking a lot of key information on how the appraiser reached their conclusions. And I think, we tried hard to kind of get the word out to appraisers and what we're looking for, and 99% of the time we're successful. But just kind of needs to be tweaked every once in a while.
And I know appraisers are pretty backed up, so.
Yeah.
This was a new appraiser, wasn't it?
Yeah, and this was a new appraiser, I believe, to LMF projects.
At least not a frequent flyer, someone we've seen before, but not regularly.
We have a certain comfort level with some of the appraisers that are out there, and just disrupted our karma.
Well, we don't want to disrupt commerce.
Particularly Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm assuming that over time will be different conversations between staff and the AOC, just about
Yeah,
making sure that obviously we need the detailed information. It just needs to be done in a usable format.
Well, I think with the new standards that we have, or the revamped duties of the Appraisal Oversight Committee, I mean, it very clearly recognizes that none of us are appraisers,
Yeah.
and we don't want to be. but we want to be able to understand it and be able to logically look at those things and come to a conclusion. So.
Okay. So it sounds like, Catherine, I think, thanks for bringing that forward. I think this is something that hopefully we'll improve over time, then. Okay, great. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Read into the record the motion is to confirm the allocation of $302,000 and LMF CNR funding to support the acquisition project, subject to standard conditions. Is there any objections to the motion? No objections in the room or online, the motion passes. Got one more for. Anybody else on staff do any work?
None of it. That was all Laura. Talking Brook Public Land in New Gloucester, Cumberland County is the last one for me today. This is a 156 acre fee acquisition by the Bureau of Parks and Lands in partnership with the Trust for Public Land. This is a community conservation project located between Portland and Wilson Auburn, those population centers. Offers multi-use forest land, varied terrain and water features, and is accessible to people of different ages and abilities. The preliminary award, if you remember back in May, was $150,000, but because of the appraisal we'll talk about here in a second, the project is eligible for $140,000 based on that appraised value. So the AOC met on March 7th of 2023 to discuss the Talking Brook appraisal. The appraisal reported a value of $280,000 and the committee accepted the appraised value. So here's a draft motion for your consideration.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $280,000.
Great. As a committee motion, does not need a second. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll read into the record. The motion is to approve the recommendation of the AOC and accept the appraised value of $280,000. Any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes.
Public notice for the Talking Brook Public Land Project was advertised in the Portland Press Herald and the Kennebec Journal on March 10th of 2023. No comments were received. Second draft motion here for your review.
From the allocation of $140,000 in LMF conservation and recreational funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second that motion.
Motion by Roger Burley, seconded by Jim Norris. Before we go to the board, is there anybody in the audience? Yes, Liz.
I just wanted to add on the first slide that Royal River Conservation Trust is also one of our key partners on this project in addition to Trust for Public Land.
Great, thank you for that, Liz. Any additional comments online? Back to the board. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll read into the record. The motion is to confirm the allocation of $140,000 in LMF CNR funding to support the acquisition subject to standard conditions. Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes. Great, moving right along. East Wyndham, Laura.
I get to, East Wyndham Conservation Project in Cumberland County. Yes. Okay, we have 697, give or take acres. The town of Wyndham is acquiring this for recreation lands principally, right there in the heart of our very most populous area. They have, working with the Presumpscot Land Trust, you see there's the bottom, Presumpscot Land Trust will be taking conservation easement to help manage this land. Together they have imagined, they've been talking about this and dreaming this project for a long time, this walking trail to these really beautiful areas of scenic interest. And there's an observation tower, an old observation tower with 360-degree scenic views from the top of that hill. They're not quite sure what they're going to do with it, but it's something that they're kicking around as part of a feature, as part of this project.
Is the tower climbable now?
I don't think the one that we're talking about isn't the water tower. It's the remains of it's really nothing. No. So I know, the AOC, met on, March 7th to discuss the project. They reported, the appraisal reported a value of $2,192,000 between these two parcels. One is, a couple of smaller parcels, the other's a few larger parcels. And they accepted the appraised value of $2,192,000. These will close together. If they don't, we'll allocate between. So we have a draft motion number 1. That's a Bobcat footprint taken in the snow.
I move to approve the recommendation of the LMF Appraisal Oversight Committee and accept the appraiser's value of $2,192,000 for the two parcels.
Committee motion does not need a second. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll read into the record. The motion is to approve the recommendation of the AOC, accept the appraised value of $2,192,000 for the two parcels. Any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes.
We announced public notice in the Kennebec Journal and the Portland Press Herald on March 10th, and there were no comments. We created the draft motion number 2 for your consideration.
I move that we approve the allocation of $998,000 in LMF conservation and recreational funding to support the acquisition, subject to standard conditions.
Second.
Motion by Barbara, seconded by Roger. And before we go back to the board, is there anybody in the room or online that would like to comment on this project? Not seeing any hands. Back to the board. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none. I'll read into the record. The motion is to confirm the allocation of $998,000 in LMF conservation and recreational funding to support the acquisition subject to standard conditions. Any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes.
Beautiful. Thank you to AOC. You've had a busy couple of months getting through all those. Nice work.
Okay. So moving right along to the Muddy River Forest Project.
And that one is me. So this is a request to amend a project that the board has previously approved funding for. The Muddy River Forest Project is a fairly large multi-parcel easement project, or it was. The proposal from Luneco Land Trust is to amend the project by taking out everything except for the one orange parcel at the south end of this project. The other parcels are under fairly complicated family ownership, and the logistics of getting that sorted out for a conservation easement ended up being too much of a challenge to get done in a time frame. So according by our workbook, any change to the parcel configuration of a project requires approval from the board. So that request is here before you today, and BPL supports this request to change the project. Next slide. So just a quick summary of the number side of this. You can see the acres being removed and the change in value and LMF allocation would be reduced to from $700,000 to $435,000. And the match would stay essentially the same. So there is a draft motion there for your consideration.
Before we go to a draft motion, I mean, this is a fairly substantial change from an acreage standpoint. You just about the LMF funds, the 700 to 435. I mean, we lose 1,000 acres, but the cost, was it because of fee versus acquisition versus
Easton, yeah.
easement?
The one parcel that's remaining has frontage on Sebago Cove, which is part of Sebago Lake.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of the dollar value is it's in the parcel that remains.
Okay.
So it's like I said, you can see the match percentage. It's pretty proportional.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jason. Jim.
Jason, do you have any idea whether the the portion that's not being carried forward will come forward sometime? Are they tossing in the towel?
I think they're continuing discussions and time will tell if it comes back to us.
Barbara?
Could you just discuss for a minute the ecological values in the remaining parcel? The other parcels provided some connectivity to other existing conserved lands. And this one would seem to have the most direct impact on the Muddy River, of course.
Yeah, so this one has a fairly large amount of undeveloped shoreline on Sebago Lake and also upland forests and wetlands areas. It's also an area that is subject to development pressure. It's actually an area that this area is part of an approved subdivision that hasn't been developed yet. So the plan would be, with this easement, would be to take it out of that development potential.
Did I hear somebody say that there was a shift from easement to fee here, but here it looks like it's still just an easement project.
It is
Maybe
just
I
an
was-
easement project.
Yeah, it's just an easement. An expensive easement.
Yeah,
We have not received the appraisal, so that will get confirmed, that value will get confirmed. We're still working with estimates at this point.
yeah. Is staff comfortable? I mean, we spent a lot of time scoring these, and this is a substantial change. I think it's to the point that you're bringing up, Barbara. I mean, do we still feel like it would score similarly with this great of a change? Jim?
Yeah, that brings to mind the question, do we have anything in the handbook? I didn't look, but that would dictate just where you draw the line between reconsidering and rescoring, or?
The guidance in the workbook is changes of this size come to the board.
Yeah.
So
Nothing mandatory is on the part of.
No,
Yep.
it's the discretion of the board on how we want to deal with it.
Yep.
Barbara?
Just wanted to explore this connectivity piece just a little bit more because as I see it now, this will not be connected to the existing conserved land. And who owns the conserved land? So there was a little green connector.
That green connector, I think, is actually one of the pieces that's being withdrawn.
That's correct. So it's not
No
being
direct connection.
correct. And who did own the other hash marked conserved land?
It's a mix, and I would have to go digging into the data. I don't have that information.
And, okay.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Liz, yes, please.
I just wanted to share that, like, early on before the proposal, we had some conversations with the applicant about them as separate projects and as one, and we're kind of encouraged them to think about the story it told at a landscape scale level, but from the department side of things, definitely have always seen value in the components, both separately and collectively on the landscape. So, and as Jason said, the Bureau supports the proposed changes. We still see value in this project, even though it's kind of smaller now than originally part of the proposal.
Thank you, Liz. What's the pleasure of the board?
Might make a motion. I move to approve the modification of the Muddy River Forest Project as proposed.
I'd second that.
Motion by Jim Norris, seconded by Bob Myers. Any questions or comments on the motion? Catherine?
Do you know when you're going to get the appraisal in? When's that expected?
I think they're expecting this summer. They're finalizing a draft easement and then they'll order the appraisal.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? I'll read into the record. The motion is to approve modifications to the Muddy River Forest project as proposed. Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes. On to Mattawamke.
So this, the Matagoda Stream, Mattawamke River Wildlife Management Area was purchased by IFW in 1990 with LMF funding. And now we have a proposal from DOT to replace a bridge over Matagoda Stream. And as part of that, they need from IFW permission to build a temporary road and bridge during construction, and also a slope easement once construction is complete. IFW has reviewed this, concluded that it's within their statutory authority and will not adversely affect the conservation purposes of the purchase. So this is not something that requires board action. This is an informational item from IFW so that you all know what's going on with the property. Brian Robichaud is here from IFW if there are any questions, or it is here, but is online. Or maybe Bethany is here to speak, one or the other.
I may be online, but I can speak for him.
Go ahead.
But can if he, I don't really have anything specific. But if there are any questions.
Okay. It's my understanding that DOT, when they do the guardrail work, is going to move the guardrail over, so it'll actually create some benefit to water access. Is that correct?
They're apparently going to flare the guardrail a little bit
Yeah.
to leave an opportunity for a little bit more safe access to the water resource. It is used very occasionally
Yeah.
for water access. So the intent here isn't to formalize something, but just to offer a safe opportunity for those few individuals who are using that particular site.
It'll improve safety then for a bullet.
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. I think there's some benefit there as well. Any questions on this one, Barbara?
Just out of curiosity, is there a culvert involved here?
I don't think so. I think this is just a bridge.
It's just the
replacement.
bridge. Is there any marshland in?
I don't believe so. Is Ryan online? He has a better sense of what's going on
I
here.
think he was not gonna be able to join us until a little bit later, so
Yeah.
if we wanted to circle back when he's available, we could do that.
I can find out, Barbara, but I don't know specifically about the marsh component.
Is that right? We'll just follow up with you on that unless the board wants. Yeah.
Taking a particular interest in marshes now, so.
Uh-oh.
Good to know, good to know. Stop, take notes.
Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll move right along in the agenda to the set aside for legal access improvements and inventories.
Great. So at our last meeting, the board took a vote on sort of amending the set asides for access improvement grants and asked us to come back and just kind of confirm where that stands. Would that be more than was originally set aside or less than was originally set aside? So I thought I would just kind of lay it out again. Your initial board votes were 5% of funds for access improvements, stewardship, legal inventories. And that combined 15% totals $4,500,000. Subsequently, the board voted to set aside 5% of the first $200,000 of the appraised value, and then 2% of the appraised value over 200,000 to a maximum award of 25,000. That applies to both stewardship funds and access improvement grants. Next slide. So what that looks like for round 10 projects, these are the projects you've already selected. If we went with the 5% set aside for stewardship funds and access improvement grants, that would be 681,000. With the amended policy, it comes in lower than the 5%, and leaving a difference of 137,580 in both stewardship and access improvement grants. So you have created more funds available for projects with this policy. So just wanted to demonstrate that and show you, so you know where that stands.
It's not as great as I thought it was.
Yes, Sarah, to refresh my memory, how does this roll over if it's not applied for? Does it just stay in the fund balance?
Yep. Yeah, so we'll see with access improvement grants, when Jason goes through those, not all applicants apply for them. And so those funds then become available. We have quite a few years ago amended our process so that folks have a one-time shot at access improvement grants. We notify you the following year after your project closes, and that's your opportunity to apply for them rather than sort of a 5 or 10-year window. It gets hard to keep track of the funds over that long of a period. So if you don't come during your one-time shot, those funds are then available.
Questions, in your expert opinion, does our revised policy on stewardship achieve the board's goal of increasing funds to smaller projects? And it would seem from the rollout that you gave us that we have achieved our purpose of making more funds for stewardship and access to smaller projects.
I think that is a true statement, yes.
And do we know at this point how many of round 10 projects have applied for stewardship funds?
We could figure that out. And I think we'll be able to figure that out when we get to this, to the next section.
More comments on set size? No? Any additional comments? Seeing none, we'll go right into the next item, which is the access improvement grants. Jason.
All right, so as Sarah said, each year we invite all the projects that closed last year to apply for access improvement grants. This year, and this is the only year this will happen, we have the round 9 projects that closed last year eligible with a base eligibility of 2% of the LMF award, or double that for adaptive access projects. And then round 10, the eligibility that Sarah just discussed. So this year we had 4 round 9 projects and 3 round 10 projects that closed, requesting a total of just under $68,000. Very quick rundown of what those projects are. Next slide. So these are the round 9 projects. 3 of the 4 applied. Eggemoggin and Reach, they're going to build a universally accessible packed gravel trail going from the parking area down to a shoreline overlook. So they are looking for that 4% rather than 2%. Mary Meeting Park, there is an existing network of trails on the property. They are going to put up an entrance kiosk and signage, and also interpretive signs along those trails. And St. George River, this is a small waterfront park and hand carry launch. They're going to add a kiosk and picnic tables, and the adaptive access component there is that at least one of the picnic tables will be of the design that allows wheelchair access with the overhang on the end. Next slide. And these are the 2 round 10 projects. Bucks Ledge is doing a variety of improvements to existing trails, new trails, parking, and one of those will be universally accessible. And Kennebec Highlands is improving the road into Vienna Mountain and adding parking. So those are the 5 projects that have requested funding. There is a summary of the amounts requested and a draft motion for your consideration.
And they move to award access improvement grants to Eggemoggin and Reach, Mary Meeting Park, St. George River, Bucks Ledge, and Kennebec Highlands projects in the amounts requested for a total not to exceed $57,930.
Second that motion.
Motion by Roger Burley, seconded by Jim Norris. Are there any questions or comments on the motion or any of the projects? Seeing no questions, I'll read into the record the motion. It's to award access improvement grants to the Eggemongan Reach, Merry Meeting Park, St. George River, Bucks Ledge, and Kennebec Highlands projects. The amount requested for a total not to exceed $57,930. Is there any objections to the motion? Seeing no objections in the room or online, the motion passes.
Can I follow up on Barbara's question?
Yes.
It looks like 3 of the round 10 projects were eligible to apply. 2 did, and there are about 30 active projects. So like 10% so far.
Okay. Moving right along on the agenda, next item is number 8, board policy topic. There.
Great. So I wanted to just bring to the board a discussion that has been started among our contract attorneys and staff as a result of some trends that the attorneys are seeing, particularly with pre-acquired properties. These are properties that either were acquired before or during the application process or closed prior to LMF funds being released. And as a result of some of the challenges that have come up, we've started a discussion with our attorneys to think about how we might be able to front load some of the state legal process to ensure that we can get to closing in an expedient and as least complicated process as possible. We don't have a recommendation for you at this point in time. However, the idea is that staff would continue to work with the attorneys and bring you a recommendation prior to the development of a future workbook. Wanted to just kind of alert you to this conversation and see if you had questions or thoughts.
Based on your review so far, is there an opportunity or is there a chance that we're likely to expend funds that will not, where the project won't come to fruition, and just consider it due diligence on our part, and that's how we.
That is how we have operated. There's always the chance that a project, for whatever reason, will not make it to closing. We have tried to sequence our legal review so that we minimize that risk. But I think what we're finding is that there may need to be an adjustment to that process. The thought being better to have spent the funds up front and have the project close quickly than to wait and then realize we have to do a whole lot of rework, whether it's on the deed or title or the survey. So that's the thinking.
Seems to me that it's in keeping with our goal of getting TS, making things work. We're stepping beyond to make sure that that happens. So I'm supportive of continuing that.
In your view, have pre-acquisitions increased over the last 5 or 6 years? It seems to me from a real estate perspective that with this hot market, everything is opportunistic. And so that would be a trend that we may have seen over the past few years.
I think I could say yes. I wouldn't say it's a huge increase, but yeah, I think part of that also has been the lack of LMF funds. And so, land trusts are kind of taking a risk of saying, well, we think LMF funds are going to be available and we're going to move forward with this.
Also, there seem to be 2 ways that we get pre-acquisitions. There are intermediaries like the Conservation Fund. Then it's like a new project, it's not a pre-acquisition. But then sometimes a municipality or a cooperating entity has to step up. They may not have the conservation fund. Or-
Yeah, it's typically those that are coming in and closing before LMF can do the due diligence and before, you know, they're taking a risk before LMF is ready to release their funds. That's where we're seeing some just challenges. Usually they're around title, you know.
And do they tend to be smaller than larger or?
Project size?
Yeah.
I would, yeah, I don't think you can make that assumption. I think it's a whole variety of factors.
There've been any train wrecks?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and it's often you know, things that are technical, you know, technical details that a cooperating entity might not understand or see when they get the title report. I think my sense is there's been a bit of a change as well in land trusts using a title attorney to prepare the title work, who is not the attorney who is also working with them to do the deal. And so there's like maybe a little bit of a disconnect between what the title attorney is doing and then what, you know, if they're working with an attorney that's getting them to closing. And I think there's opportunity to close that gap, which would help head off some of these issues.
Maybe when I said a train wreck, I wasn't referring to attorneys disagreeing on some details, but actually
It's
a
not,
project that actually failed to be completed.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, so-
It's usually not disagreements. It's just, oh, we bought this and we didn't understand
Mhm.
the access to the property, or we didn't understand, we didn't own all the rights.
Seems like I don't remember the detail, but some didn't anticipate the local reaction to what happened, the political side of, you recall any that fell in that camp?
Any of those during my tenure, I do recall one project that was done sort of just before I came on where that,
Maybe that's where.
yeah.
So timing back to the board with a draft policy.
I'm thinking late summer, early fall, but
Yeah.
staff will navigate that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime we are fronting money to do some of this work, it's, you know, we run that risk. I think that's been the process all along, and there's thousands of examples in state government where that's probably the case, where we're working on something that may not come to fruition. I think, so I'll be interesting to see how this plays out with the attorneys. So look forward to seeing it.
And just speaking in favor of taking a little risk, I think, you know, the work that we do demands that we are a little bit into risk or we'll miss a lot of great projects. So
Yeah.
if everything closed and everything, I would say we're probably too heavy on the due diligence, you know, or the, you know, so I'm comfortable with a modicum of risk.
And I think there is a way to sort of balance that risk such that the applicant, if they are planning a pre-acquisition, front loads delivering some of the documents
Yeah.
to us. So
Yeah,
I think it's a little bit on both sides.
Yeah, our risk minimal compared to, yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Any other policy topics?
I just wanted to remind folks of the topics that have been identified for 2023 and let you know that there were two added after some discussion with a couple of board members. There's an interest in revisiting our sign policy. We've had the request for, rather than posting the LMF sign, can we have a digital copy of your logo that we will add to our kiosk or whatever we're planning? And so just having a formalized policy of what that looks like would be helpful. And then some discussion around sort of press and publicity, whether there is a desire to create language that we provide to applicants. Currently, applicants are asked to coordinate with LMF on any publicity. And I'd say that happens most of the time. However, there's been interest in, let's give them this specific language so that it's just, you know, a little bit more canned and easier rather than waiting for an invitation to coordinate. So those are two additions. I don't think, I think a small committee could easily come together for a meeting or two and come up with a recommendation. I don't think this is a heavy lift.
Laura can take care of that stuff.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Okay, any additional comments or questions on that list? If that's the case, then let's move on to item number 9, which is staff update.
Okay, so this is the update, Barbara and Jim, that you were looking for. We had 25 initial inquiries. We have had several of those indicate that they do not plan to submit a full proposal. I'm thinking it'll be in the 15 to 17 application range. So looking at approximately 7,600 acres with a $9 million in request, leveraging just under $11 million. We do know that one of these will submit as a water access proposal. Proposals are due this Friday, and we have one sitting in our office already. So it's exciting. It's going to be, the remainder of the week will be busy. That's a map of the distribution of those projects, the 17.
Gee, it looks like it might be 25. I was just counting stars.
Oh, did we not?
We didn't update.
We didn't update the map. That was the initial map.
I'm a good little counter.
Lots of practice, huh?
I would be curious which one's this.
We can send around an updated map.
Yeah.
And Sarah, 8 inquiries didn't move forward, but I imagine you have some sense of why they didn't move forward. Will we see some in the future?
It's been a mix. Some of them are not, a handful of them have been not being able to come to an agreed upon price with the seller. That's been sort of a common theme this time around. Do you remember other reasons?
Two of them we determined were a poor fit for LMF funding.
That's
and they were
right.
not sponsored
Initially.
by either of our
Out of the gate.
DSAs.
Yeah.
So that was 2. And then a couple of them, I think, just withdrew for, with the anticipation of either proceeding with other funding or coming back to us next year.
That's right. Other funding sources were a better fit. Mostly it was, there seemed to be more of an abundance of, this is kind of we're hoping this works out, but we don't have an agreement. We can't even get the seller to talk to us yet. We'll get our stuff in on time and see how it goes. There was
Right.
Some of that.
There's definitely a lot of that this time around where people were getting their inquiry in to save their spot and see what they could come up with in the next 6
Within the
weeks.
17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Within the 25.
Oh, within the.
So
20.
that's why they did not move
Oh, okay.
forward
All
with
right.
full proposals.
Okay.
And then the last thing, I just wanted to update you all, the MOU that we've discussed several times with MNRCP has moved on. It's with TNC and DEP. It will come back for Pat's signature, but that is circulating and we're moving forward with that. Nope, just there's your $9 million in requests potentially coming, your $11 million of available funds and just the reminder that we also have a call for proposals that will come looking forest projects that will be tapping into those funds. So just in the next couple of weeks, be thinking about what strategy you might want to use.
Okay. No questions from the board?
Has her hands up,
Catherine?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Just one question, Sarah, on the, do you have, it's probably too early to know what you have for forest projects that will be coming forward. I'm just concerned where there's 11 million and if we already have 9 million, you know, projects, those, obviously that's not all guaranteed, but I'm just worried about funding here.
I don't have any inside knowledge on that. I'm hoping that by May, we will have more information for you, to be able to think that through.
Thank you.
And Sarah, when's the next round of farmland working?
We have the farmland, RFP is open now, accepting applications. Working Waterfront has not issued an RFP this year. So,
Those are different pots of
Yep.
money, so.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments on these issues? Want to throw the dates up for the next meetings?
AOC is gonna be cranking right along, continuing to get through these projects, and then next time you all meet will be to review proposals.
Yay. So it's the two, so we've got 2 days scheduled
2 days.
for those.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any additional issues or items to come before the board? Being none, I'd like you all to hold your seats. I'd like to adjourn the meeting and then do a little roasting off record and not record.
Oh, boy.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved, second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. So we have adjourned the meeting. I just want to take a second. I can't